Billionaire CEO sees twins selling toy car to save their mother. Their lives will never be the same again. Billionaire CEO Marcus Blackwell stopped his Lamborghini at the busiest corner in Manhattan when he saw something that made him question everything in his life. Two boys, no older than 8, held a dirty, scratched red toy car, begging someone to buy it for just $5. Their eyes were red from crying, and their torn clothes told a story Marcus had never imagined existing so close to his world of luxury. "Please, sir, our mom will die if we don't get this money," said the taller boy, his voice trembling as he held his younger brother's hand. The most feared executive on Wall Street felt something strange tighten in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in decades. He lowered the tinted window of his car, curious to understand what two children were doing alone there in the middle of a Friday afternoon. Welcome. I'm Marcos Paulo, the storyteller. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment on which city you're watching from. Marcus had built a $2 billion empire by being ruthless, calculating, and above all, indifferent to others' suffering. He fired employees without blinking, shut down family businesses like closing a folder, and never lost a night's sleep thinking about the consequences of his decisions. His philosophy was simple: the weak perish, the strong thrive, and he was at the top of the business food chain. But something about those two identical boys, with disheveled blonde hair and blue eyes shining with tears, made him hesitate before accelerating and heading to his business meeting. Maybe it was the purity of their faces or the desperate way they offered their only toy, but Marcus felt a pang of curiosity he couldn't explain. "What happened to your mother?" he asked, his voice sounding softer than intended. The twins approached the car with renewed hope, and what they told him in the next few minutes would forever change the life of the most powerful man in the city. The story about to unfold wasn't just about money or power. It was about discovering that sometimes life's greatest riches can't be bought, only found in the most unexpected places. And Marcus Blackwell was about to learn that lesson in the most transformative way possible. What would the CEO do when he discovered the truth behind those $5? How would his decision in that moment change not only the twins' lives, but revolutionize his own existence completely? The answer was hidden in the next few minutes of a conversation that would become the watershed in the lives of everyone involved. Thomas and Timothy were 8-year-old twins living in a small apartment in New York's poorest suburbs, sharing a mattress on the floor and dreaming every night of the day their mother, Sarah, would smile again like before. Sarah worked 3 jobs: cleaner at a hospital in the morning, waitress in the afternoon, and typist at night. But even so, she could barely pay the rent and buy enough food for the 3 of them. The boys were known in the neighborhood for their kindness and precocious maturity, taking care of each other when their mother was working and sharing any treats they got with other even needier children. Thomas, 2 minutes older, protected Timothy from bullies at school, while Timothy, smarter with numbers, helped Thomas with homework. They were inseparable, 2 halves of the same brave heart. The red toy car had been their only Christmas gift the previous year, bought by Sarah at a used store with money she saved by skipping meals for weeks. For the twins, that car represented all the toys they never had, all the games they invented, and all the happy moments they shared, imagining adventures in distant worlds. Their dreams were simple and pure. They wanted their mother to stop crying hidden in the bathroom, to have enough food so they wouldn't go to bed hungry, and one day to give Sarah a house with a garden where she could plant the flowers she loved so much. They didn't ask for riches or luxuries, just the basics every child deserves: security, love, and hope. Poverty had taught the twins lessons that many rich people never learned: the value of gratitude, the importance of family unity, and the power of small acts of kindness. They shared the last piece of bread without question, offered their own coat to classmates who were cold, and always found reasons to smile, even on the hardest days. But in recent months, they watched their mother wither before their eyes, with nighttime coughs that wouldn't stop. pains she tried to hide, and a growing pallor that scared them more each day. Sarah hid the truth about her condition from them, but the children sensed something was terribly wrong, and the feeling of helplessness consumed them. It was that helplessness that had brought them to the streets that afternoon, with their most precious possession in hand, willing to sacrifice their only source of joy for the chance to save the person they loved most in the world. They didn't know that across the street, a man who had everything was about to discover what it really meant to have something worth fighting for. That same morning, Sarah had received the call that would change everything, the medical diagnosis confirming her worst fears. The cancer had spread, and without immediate treatment, she had only a few weeks left. The doctor was straightforward. They needed $5,000 to start basic treatment, an impossible amount for someone earning minimum wage with no health insurance. Sarah collapsed in the hospital hallway, holding the phone with trembling hands as tears streamed down her thin face. How would she explain to her sons that their mother was dying? How would she say there wasn't enough money in the whole world to save her? The feeling of failure as a mother and provider suffocated her more than the disease itself. When she got home, she tried to hide the despair, but Thomas and Timothy immediately noticed something was wrong. They saw her rummaging through drawers for money that didn't exist, making desperate calls to distant relatives who couldn't help, and finally locking herself in the room to cry silently. The boys pressed their ears to the door and heard fragments of a phone conversation that chilled them. "We don't have the money. A few weeks. My children will be orphans." The cruel reality of the situation hit the twins like a punch to the stomach. Their mother was dying, and they had no power to save her. They were just two poor kids in a city that didn't care about their existence, invisible to a world that measured value in dollars and social status. That night, as Sarah finally fell asleep exhausted from crying, Thomas and Timothy made a silent promise they wouldn't let their mother die without fighting. They had to find a way to get money, even if it meant sacrificing everything they owned. Childhood had ended for them in that moment. Now they were two little warriors in a battle against time. The desperate plan was born in the early hours. They would sell the toy car and anything else they could find. $5, $10, $20. Every cent counted. They knew it was impossible to get $5,000, but maybe with luck they could get enough for at least one more day of life for their mother. When the sun rose, the twins were already dressed and ready to hit the streets. They didn't know that this brave and desperate decision would put them in the path of a man who had the power to change everything, if they could touch his seemingly steel-armored heart. Before Marcus stopped, the twins had already endured hours of humiliation on the streets of Manhattan. Well-dressed people looked at them with disdain, some even crossing the street to avoid them, as if poverty were contagious. "Your parents shouldn't leave you on the street," murmured a woman in a fur coat, hurrying her step while talking on her phone about the beggar problem in the city. A security guard from a department store chased them off the sidewalk, claiming they were hindering customer traffic. Thomas tried to explain they just wanted to sell a toy, but the burly man shoved them roughly, making Timothy trip and scrape his knee on the asphalt. The red car rolled into the gutter, and for a terrible moment, the boys thought they had lost it forever. A group of rich teenagers leaving an expensive diner found it amusing to mock the twins. "Look, two identical little beggars," laughed one, taking photos with his phone. "I'm posting this on Instagram. How pathetic." They threw some coins on the ground on purpose, laughing as Timothy, desperate, bent down to pick them up, ignoring the tears of humiliation rolling down his face. The cruelest scene happened when an elegant businesswoman stopped, feigning interest. $5 for this junk?" she said, examining the car with disdain. "I'll give you 50 cents, max." When Thomas explained they needed the money to help their sick mother, she laughed coldly. "Learn early that the world owes you nothing. Work." And she walked away, leaving the boys even more broken. With each rejection, the twins' hope diminished a little more. They saw their tears dry, replaced by a fierce determination that shouldn't exist in such young hearts. Timothy held Thomas's hand tightly, whispering, "We can't give up. We can't let Mom die." The pain of humiliation was less than the terror of losing the only person who loved them. After 4 hours on the street, they had collected only $2.75, coins thrown more out of pity than real interest in the car. The sun was setting. Sarah would soon wake up and notice they were gone, and the twins began to feel the weight of failure on their small shoulders. That's when the black Lamborghini stopped at the corner and Marcus Blackwell lowered the window. In the boys' eyes, a last spark of hope shone. They didn't know they were about to meet someone who would understand, for the first time in his life, the true meaning of the word need. Marcus listened to the full story in silence, his expressive face gradually transforming as the twins told about Sarah, the cancer, the impossible $5,000. For the first time in decades, the billionaire CEO was confronted with a reality his money had always shielded him from: the fragility of human life and a family's unconditional love. $5,000, Marcus repeated, almost to himself. For him, it was less than he spent on a business dinner, less than he paid for a suit, less than his driver earned in a month. But for those boys, it represented the difference between life and death for the most important person in the world. The cruel irony of the situation hit him like a bolt of awareness. He observed the red car in Thomas's trembling hands, a cheap, worn toy worth maybe $2 at a thrift store. But in the twins' eyes, that object carried the weight of all the love they felt for their mother, all the hope left in their broken little hearts. It was the sacrifice of two children willing to give up their only joy for the chance to save whom they loved. Marcus turned off the Lamborghini's engine and got out of the car, kneeling on the sidewalk to be at the boys' level. His $3,000 Italian suit touched the dirty asphalt, but he didn't care. "What are your names?" he asked softly, his voice laden with an emotion he could no longer hide. "Thomas and Timothy," they replied together, surprised by the rich man's kindness. "And will you buy our car, please? We need it so much." Marcus took the toy in his hands, feeling the rough plastic and the marks from so much use. In that moment, he understood he was holding something far more valuable than any of his $1 million investments. "I'll buy it," said Marcus, pulling out his wallet. "But not for $5. The boys looked at each other, confused and fearful he would offer even less. "I'll pay the fair price for a treasure like this." He placed a $1,000 bill in Thomas's hand, who stared open-mouthed at the paper he'd never seen before. That moment marked the beginning of a transformation that would change all their lives. Marcus didn't know yet, but he had just found something he'd been searching for years without realizing: a real purpose for his wealth and a true reason to use his power. The twins had planted a seed of humanity in the armored heart of New York's most feared CEO. Marcus couldn't just hand over the money and leave. Something inside him had awakened, an urgent need to better understand that family and discover how he could truly help. He cancelled all his meetings for the day, called his assistant saying he had a personal emergency, and asked the twins to take him to where they lived. Sarah's apartment was smaller than Marcus's closet, but it was impeccably clean and organized. The peeling walls were decorated with the boys' drawings, colorful paper flowers, and a framed photo of the family in happier times. Sarah was sleeping in the only bedroom, visibly weakened, her irregular breathing revealing the severity of her condition. Marcus watched the twins prepare a simple snack, 2 pieces of bread with butter divided into 4 equal parts, and realized that was probably their only meal of the day. They ate in silence, offering half their portion to the rich man who bought our car. The generosity of those children, even in extreme poverty, was like a slap in the billionaire's face. He began asking questions about school, which they often missed to care for their mother, about other relatives, non-existent, about dreams and future plans, too simple for someone used to grand ambitions. Thomas wanted to be a doctor to heal people like his mother. Timothy dreamed of a house where they could plant flowers in the garden. Marcus left there determined to do more than just pay for medical treatment. He wanted to completely transform that family's life, give them opportunities they'd never had, build a future where Sarah could recover with dignity and the twins could truly be children. But first, he needed to act fast to save Sarah. That night, he mobilized his network of medical contacts, managing to transfer Sarah to the city's best oncology hospital the next day. He paid for a full year of treatment in advance, hired the best specialists, and ensured she had everything needed to fight the disease. But he knew money alone wouldn't be enough. That family had touched something deep in his soul. Marcus began questioning everything in his life, the purpose of his wealth, the value of his achievements, the emotional void he always tried to fill with more business and more money. For the first time, he had found people who valued him not for what he owned, but for the kindness he had shown, and that scared and inspired him at the same time. 2 weeks later, when Sarah was starting to respond well to treatment, Marcus received a call that nearly destroyed everything. His partners had discovered his unnecessary expenses on the family and were threatening to remove him from the company's presidency. "You've lost focus, Marcus," said Richard Winters, his vice president. "You're spending company resources on charity, canceling important meetings, losing million-dollar deals because of 2 poor kids." The board meeting was brutal. Investors questioned his mental health, suggested he was going through a midlife crisis, and presented documents to oust him from the position. "Blackwell Industries was built on efficiency and profit," declared one member. "We can't let sentimentality destroy decades of work." Marcus felt his empire, built with so much sacrifice, crumbling before his eyes. Worse still, someone had leaked information to the press. Newspapers splashed cruel headlines. "Billionaire CEO loses his mind over 2 kids. Wall Street king turns babysitter for the poor." Marcus Blackwell, from business shark to charity clown. Social media exploded with memes and jokes about his emotional weakness, and competitors took advantage to attack his reputation. The pressure intensified when they discovered Marcus had used personal money for other needy families he met during hospital visits. He had become obsessed with helping, as if trying to make up for decades of indifference. But in the business world, this was seen as mental instability, not personal growth. Richard Winters made a final proposal. Marcus had to choose between keeping control of the company or continuing playing savior. "Cut all ties with that family, go back to being the ruthless man we know, or sign your resignation," he ultimatumed. The decision had to be made in 48 hours, or they would take control of the company through a prepared legal maneuver. Marcus spent the night awake, pacing his penthouse apartment that suddenly seemed cold and empty. Everything he had fought for over decades was at risk because of a decision made in a few minutes on the street. He looked out the window at the city he had conquered and wondered if it was really worth keeping an empire built on coldness and indifference to others' suffering. The next morning, he received a drawing from Thomas and Timothy by mail, the 3 of them together, smiling with Sarah in the background, cured and happy. On the back, a message in childish handwriting: "Thank you for saving us. You are our hero." Marcus knew at that moment his decision was made, even if it cost him everything he had built. On the day of the decisive meeting, Marcus arrived at the boardroom prepared to resign, but found a surprise that would change everything. Sitting in the main chair was Elena Rodriguez, a Latina investor he knew only by reputation, known for building business empires based on social responsibility and positive impact. Elena stood up with an enigmatic smile and extended her hand to Marcus. "Mr. Blackwell, we need to talk before you make any hasty decision. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and I've just bought 51% of Blackwell Industries shares." The silence in the room was deafening. Richard Winters paled, and the other board members looked at each other without understanding what was happening. "How is this possible?" stammered Richard. Elena opened a folder and spread documents on the table. "Very simple. While you were busy conspiring against the most visionary man in this company, I was buying shares from minor shareholders who lost faith in the current management. Mr. Blackwell will not be ousted. On the contrary, now he'll have total freedom to implement the change this company needs." Marcus was shocked. Elena continued, "I've watched your trajectory for years, waiting for the right moment to propose a partnership. When I learned about the situation with the family through my hospital contacts, I understood you had finally discovered the true power of business, transforming lives. You're not getting weak. You're getting strong in a way your competitors can never imitate." She explained she had built an $8 billion empire focused on companies that generated profit through positive social impact. The future of business isn't in exploitation, but in elevation. Modern consumers want to support companies that make a difference. "You've just discovered a gold mine they don't even know exists," she said, pointing to the confused board members. Elena revealed her plan: transform Blackwell Industries into the world's largest social impact company, maintaining profitability through an innovative model she had tested in dozens of countries. "We'll start by creating a $5 billion fund for families in situations like the twins. Every saved story becomes an authentic marketing campaign. Every transformed life attracts conscious consumers. Every act of kindness generates sustainable financial returns." Marcus realized he had found not just an ally, but a mentor who could teach him to use his wealth intelligently and compassionately. Richard Winters and the other resistant board members were fired that same day, replaced by professionals specializing in social impact business. The company Marcus had built in coldness was about to be reborn in human warmth. 6 months later, the transformation of Blackwell Industries had caught the attention of William Sterling, Wall Street's most powerful and ruthless CEO, known for destroying competitors who threatened his supremacy. Sterling controlled a $15 billion conglomerate and saw Marcus's new philosophy as a direct threat to the traditional business model, based on exploitation and profit maximization without ethical considerations. Sterling launched a silent economic war against Marcus, using his political and media influence to discredit the conscious business model. He funded negative reports, spread rumors about Blackwell Industries' financial instability, and even tried to sabotage the company's sponsored social projects, including the support program for needy families. The situation escalated when Sterling discovered the twins' specific story and decided to use it as a weapon. He hired private investigators to find irregularities in the support given to Sarah's family, looking for any legal loophole that could turn an act of kindness into a public scandal. His strategy was simple: destroy Marcus through the very thing that had transformed him. Sterling leaked distorted information to the media, alleging Marcus had used investor money for personal purposes, was emotionally manipulating vulnerable families for marketing gains, and that the entire social program was a facade for tax evasion. The accusations were false, but came from seemingly credible sources and gained traction quickly. The pressure increased when Sterling managed to influence some of Blackwell Industries' largest clients to cancel contracts, citing concerns about the company's new, unstable direction. In 1 week, Marcus lost $400 million in business, and his stocks plummeted 20% on the exchange. Sterling had struck where it hurt most: Marcus's entrepreneurial pride. The psychological war culminated when Sterling made a public proposal. He would buy Blackwell Industries for half its market value, saving investors from the impending shipwreck, and promising to return the company to the solid business principles that had made it prosperous. It was an ultimatum disguised as a generous offer, an attempt to force Marcus to choose between his values and his company. Marcus knew the time had come to decide definitively what kind of businessman he wanted to be. He could accept defeat, sell the company, and return to the old methods that guaranteed financial success. Or he could fight to prove it was possible to make a difference in the world without giving up prosperity. The final battle was just beginning, and this time, the future of thousands of families depended on the outcome. Marcus decided he wouldn't run from the battle. He called a press conference for the next day, inviting not just economic journalists, but reporters from popular channels, digital influencers, and most importantly, the families themselves who had been benefited by Blackwell Industries programs. It would be the riskiest public confrontation of his career, an all-in bet on his new life philosophy. On the stage of the packed auditorium, Marcus wasn't alone. Thomas and Timothy, now in new uniforms from the private school they attended, flanked their mother Sarah, who had beaten cancer and was radiant with health. Beside them, 20 other families transformed by the social impact program. Elena Rodriguez was in the front row, smiling confidently, while Sterling watched everything from a box, clearly irritated by the theatrical setup. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice echoing through the silent auditorium, "you've been invited to witness not a business defense, but a revolution in business." He told the whole story, from the encounter with the twins to the complete transformation of his company through Sterling's attacks to the present moment. Every word was calculated, every pause strategic. Marcus then did something no one expected. He invited Sterling to the stage to publicly defend his accusations. "William Sterling claims my company is unstable. Our social programs are a facade. Helping needy families is bad business management. Come here and say it looking these children in the eyes." The public challenge caught Sterling off guard. He couldn't refuse without seeming cowardly, but accepting meant facing the very families he had tried to use as weapons. Sterling took the stage with arrogance, but his confidence wavered when Thomas approached the microphone. "Mr. Sterling," the boy said in a clear voice, "Mr. Marcus saved my mum when she was dying. He gave us a new life, good school, our own home, and never asked for anything in return. Why do you want to hurt him?" The innocent question from a child struck Sterling like a bullseye arrow. Sterling tried to maintain composure, talking about fiduciary responsibility and profit maximization, but his words sounded empty against the emotional testimonials from the present families. One by one, mothers told how their children had been saved, fathers showed before and after photos of the transformation, and children thanked for gaining a chance to dream of a better future. The decisive moment came when Elena Rodriguez took the stage with a financial report. "Ladies and gentlemen, while Mr. Sterling tried to destroy Blackwell Industries, our company had the best performance in the last 10 years. We increased profits by 300%, gained 20 million new conscious customers, and became the country's most admired brand." The silence in the auditorium was broken by an explosion of applause that lasted 5 minutes. Sterling realized he had lost not only the public battle, but the economic war. While he spent resources trying to destroy Marcus, Blackwell Industries strengthened through something he could never replicate: emotional authenticity and genuine purpose. The company's stocks rose 40% that same week, while Sterling's plummeted due to public backlash against his dirty methods. The public victory over Sterling triggered an avalanche of consequences Marcus never imagined. In less than 48 hours, over 50 companies contacted him, wanting partnerships with Blackwell Industries, attracted by the new conscious business model that proved not only profitable, but also powerful in marketing and public engagement terms. Elena's phone wouldn't stop ringing with investment proposals. Social media exploded with hashtags like Chuck Marcus Hero and Chuck a Business with Heart, turning the CEO into a global viral phenomenon. Digital influencers shared the twins' story. Mothers worldwide posted photos of their own children, thanking for businessmen like Marcus existing. And even celebrities began requesting partnerships to support social causes through the company. But not everything was roses. Sterling, publicly humiliated, launched an even crueler underground revenge campaign. He hired hackers to invade Blackwell Industries systems, spread rumors that Marcus was using benefited families just for marketing, and even threatened to sue for defamation, claiming the press conference had unfairly ruined his reputation. The psychological pressure on Marcus was intense. He began questioning if he really deserved all that recognition, if he wasn't being selfish, using the twins' story to promote his company. if he hadn't become exactly the type of person he always despised, someone who exploits emotions for profit. Sleepless nights returned, but now for completely different reasons. Thomas and Timothy, now local mini-celebrities, were invited to TV shows, radio interviews, and even to visit other cities telling their story. The excessive attention scared them. They just wanted a normal life with their healthy mother, but suddenly they became symbols of hope for millions worldwide. Sarah, still recovering from treatment, felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She received hundreds of letters daily from mothers in similar situations asking for help. Journalists knocked on her new home's door constantly, and photographers tried to capture intimate family moments to sell to magazines. The privacy they valued so much had completely disappeared. Marcus realized he had created a monster. The story that started as a simple act of kindness had turned into a media circus, causing more stress than joy for the family he loved so much. He needed to find a way to protect the twins from excessive fame while maintaining the positive impact his company was making on the world. Marcus decided to take a full week off, something he hadn't done in 15 years. He traveled alone to an isolated cabin in the mountains, taking only some books, paper to write, and many unanswered questions. It was there, away from phones and meetings, that he could finally process everything that had happened in recent months. Sitting by the fireplace, he recalled the exact moment he first saw the twins on the street. In that instant, something fundamental had changed inside him. Not just his perception of money and success, but of life's purpose itself. He realized he had spent decades building an empty empire, impressive on the outside, but soulless inside. The painful truth that emerged during those days of silence was that he had been an emotional orphan long before meeting the twins. His own parents, obsessed with work, never gave him the unconditional love Thomas and Timothy showed for their mother. He had built a fortress of coldness to protect a heart that always knew it could love deeply. Marcus began writing his memories, not to publish, but to understand. Page after page, he poured out decades of unbridled ambition, loneliness disguised as success, and relationships destroyed by obsession with money and power. For the first time, he admitted to himself that he had sacrificed his humanity on the altar of material wealth. He understood that the twins hadn't just changed his business perspective, they had saved his soul from a slow, silent death. Before them, Marcus was alive only biologically. After them, he discovered what it truly meant to live. The red toy car had become the symbol of his own lost and rediscovered childhood. The solitude in those mountains also made him realize that Eleanor wasn't just a business partner, but someone who had seen potentials in him he himself didn't know. She had bet billions not on the company he built, but on the man he could become. That trust was simultaneously inspiring and terrifying. By the end of the week, Marcus had found his answer. He wouldn't abandon the company or the social programs, but he would completely change the approach. Instead of using the family's stories for marketing, he would use his own transformation story. It would be him, not the beneficiaries, who exposed himself publicly. It was time to protect those he loved and fully assume responsibility for what he had created. When Marcus returned from the mountain, his first stop wasn't the office, but the cemetery where his parents were buried. He hadn't visited the graves in over 10 years, always finding work-related excuses. Kneeling on the damp grass, flowers in hand, he finally managed to cry for the people who had raised him but never really known him. "Dad, Mom," Marcus whispered, his voice choked. "I became everything you wanted me to be, rich, powerful, respected. But I also became everything you were, cold, distant, incapable of truly loving, until I met two children who taught me what you never could, that success without love is just a gilded prison." He told his deceased parents about Thomas and Timothy, about Sarah, about Elena, about the company's transformation. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel anger for the years of emotional abandonment he suffered, but also gratitude for the strength that lack had given him. Without the desperate search for approval, he might never have built an empire capable of helping thousands of families. 2 days later, Marcus organized an intimate dinner at his home. Just him, Elena, Sarah, Thomas, and Timothy. No cameras, journalists, or business agenda, just 5 people who had become an unlikely family, sharing a simple meal. It was the first time in years Marcus ate without talking about work. During dinner, Thomas asked a question that changed everything. "Uncle Marcus, why were you so sad when we met you?" The child's innocence pierced all the executives' defenses. Marcus looked around the table, at Elena smiling tenderly, at Sarah radiant with health, at Timothy drawing on a napkin, and found the words he'd been searching for months. "Because I had everything except the most important thing," Marcus replied, holding the boy's small hand. "I didn't know what a real family was until I met you. You taught me that being rich has nothing to do with money. It has to do with how many people you love and who love you back." Sarah started crying, Elena took his hand, and the twins hugged Marcus simultaneously. In that moment, surrounded by genuine love, Marcus finally forgave himself for the years of coldness. He understood his previous journey hadn't been a waste, but necessary preparation. Without that initial hardness, he would never have built a company powerful enough to make a difference in thousands of lives. All the suffering had purpose, leading him to that table, surrounded by his true family. 1 year after the public confrontation with Sterling, Marcus was on the stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos, being honored as CEO of the Year and receiving the Social Business Innovation Award. Beside him, Elena smiled proudly, while in the audience, Thomas and Timothy watched via video call from their school, cheering every time the camera focused on Marcus. The award acceptance speech was different from anything the audience of billionaires and world leaders expected. Marcus didn't talk about business strategies or technological innovations, but told the full story, from the emotionally orphaned boy who became a ruthless CEO to the transformative encounter with 2 twins who taught him the true meaning of wealth. "I built a $2 billion empire, believing strength meant coldness, success meant loneliness, power meant indifference," Marcus declared to a completely silent auditorium. 2 children selling a $5 toy car showed me I was building on sand foundations. True wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share. The transformation of Blackwell Industries had become a case study in universities worldwide. The company had tripled in value, but more importantly, it had inspired 400 other companies to adopt similar conscious business models. The Needy Family Support Program had already benefited over 10,000 people in 17 countries. Sterling, on the other hand, had lost everything. His company went bankrupt after a series of financial scandals exposed by journalistic investigations. He was indicted for tax evasion, market manipulation, and other corporate crimes that had been covered up for years. Ironically, it was the media exposure from the confrontation with Marcus that led authorities to investigate his business practices more deeply. Poetic justice was complete when Sterling, now bankrupt and facing prison, wrote a letter to Marcus asking for forgiveness and help. "You were right," he admitted in the letter. "I built a house of cards based on exploitation and cruelty, while you discovered how to build a legacy based on compassion and purpose. I lost everything because I never understood that winning doesn't mean making others lose." Marcus visited Sterling in prison, not to humiliate him, but to offer a second chance. "When you get out of here," Marcus said, extending his hand, "there's a place for you in my company, not as an executive but as an advisor, to teach other entrepreneurs about the dangers of the path you chose. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from the biggest mistakes." Sterling cried like a child, finally understanding what he had lost by choosing power over love. 5 years later, Marcus was sitting in the garden of a new school he had built in the neighborhood where Thomas and Timothy originally lived. The Sarah Martinez School, named after the twins' mother, served 500 vulnerable children for free. offering not just education, but meals, medical care, and psychological support. Thomas and Timothy, now 13-year-old teenagers, had become youth ambassadors for the foundation, traveling the country telling their story and inspiring other children to never give up on their dreams. Thomas kept his dream of being a doctor and was already volunteering at the hospital where his mother had been treated, while Timothy discovered a talent for business and helped Marcus develop new social projects. Marcus and Elena had married in a simple ceremony, with Thomas and Timothy as ring bearers and Sarah as godmother. Together, they had expanded the conscious business model to other continents, creating a global network of companies generating profit through positive social impact. What started as an impulsive act of kindness became a worldwide movement. Sarah had become the school's pedagogical director, using her overcoming experience to guide other mothers in similar situations. She had also written a book about her journey, with all royalties going to cancer treatment programs for low-income families. Her story inspired millions of women worldwide to not give up the fight for life. The old apartment where the family lived had become a memorial and support center for needy families. On the wall, a gold plaque read, "In this place, 2 brave children planted the seed of a revolution based on love. May their story inspire all who pass through here to believe in the transformative power of compassion." The red toy car that started it all was displayed in a glass case in Blackwell Industries' main lobby, with a plaque saying, "The most profitable investment in this company's history, $5 that bought infinite possibilities." Employees and visitors stopped daily to admire the small object that had changed the destiny of millions. That afternoon in the school garden, Marcus watched dozens of children playing and studying, knowing each one now had the opportunities Thomas and Timothy almost didn't. He had learned that true success isn't measured in accumulated dollars, but in transformed lives, conquered smiles, and renewed hopes. 10 years after that fateful encounter on Manhattan's busy corner, Marcus Blackwell became more than a billionaire CEO. He transformed into a global symbol of how a single compassionate choice can revolutionize not just one life, but entire generations. The red car story had become legend, told in schools, universities, and business conferences worldwide. In his last book, The Price of Humanity, Marcus wrote, "I spent decades accumulating zeros in bank accounts, believing that would make me complete. I discovered that 2 8-year-old boys possessed a wealth I could never buy, the ability to love unconditionally and sacrifice everything for those they love. They taught me that true power isn't in controlling others, but in empowering them to control their own lives." Marcus's transformation inspired a new generation of entrepreneurs who started their careers with social consciousness, proving it's possible to build financial empires without destroying human ones. Hundreds of young CEOs cited his story as inspiration, creating companies based on purpose before profit, compassion before competition. Thomas graduated in medicine and opened a free clinic in the community where he grew up, specializing in pediatric oncology. Timothy became a young social entrepreneur, creating apps connecting needy families with willing companies to help. Sarah continued as the moral heart of all projects, constantly reminding that behind every statistic was a real human story. The deepest lesson from this journey was that true wealth isn't something you own, but something you share. Marcus learned that money is just a tool. It can build bridges or walls, nurture dreams or feed nightmares, bring people closer or isolate them forever. The choice always belongs to who controls it. In the final words of his book, Marcus left a legacy for future generations. If you're reading this and have more than you need, while others have less than they deserve, remember, there's always a red toy car waiting to be bought. Always 2 children needing hope, always a family that can be saved by your compassion. The only difference between a selfish rich person and a transformative rich person is a simple choice. Use power to serve yourself or to serve humanity. True wealth isn't in what we accumulate for ourselves, but in what we multiply for others. Sometimes, investing $5 in humanity yields infinitely more than investing millions in coldness. The world doesn't need more billionaires. It needs more people willing to see crying twins as opportunities to plant hope, not annoyances to avoid.